Hello, everyone. My name is Daryl Morin, President, CEO, and founder of Advanced Wireless Incorporated. We'd like to take a moment to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. We've been serving Wisconsin and customers, quite frankly, around the world for about 28 years now. But we wanted to do something that was kind of special this year because we've seen so many changing requirements in the education space. And I know we're typically used to thinking about bits and bytes and data rates and those types of things, but obviously there's been a huge, tremendous need to look at security at a deeper level. I'm sure we're all familiar with the districts and the schools that have had issues, et cetera. So we wanted to put together this special lunch and learn to share some of the changes we're seeing, how Advanced Wireless and our good partners at Extreme are addressing those issues, as well as to give you a little bit of a heads up or a preview of some of the technology that's being implemented now and that's coming around the corner. So we're very excited that you were able to join us here today. I want to introduce you to two incredible gentlemen. The first one is John Kapodlowski. He's the Senior Account Manager for Government Education for Extreme Networks. And the second is, I don't want to call him a sidekick because he is more a partner in crime with him and with us here at Extreme Networks too, Mr. Mike Stepetic, Senior Systems Engineer. So with that, let me go ahead and I'm going to bring up your presentation, John, and you can take it away from there.
Sure thing. Thanks, Daryl. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I've met many of you, and I look forward to meeting the rest of you when it makes sense. Advanced Wireless, I just want to say quickly, has been a great partner for Extreme Networks for many years in Wisconsin, where I work, and beyond. But yeah, I'm John Kapodlowski, Senior Account Manager here at Extreme Networks. I live in Pewaukee, Wisconsin now. I'm from Oconomowoc originally, and we introduced my partner, Mike. So if we could flip to the next slide, Daryl.
Okay, I think I've given you keyboard and mouse control. Is it working or no? No.
I don't believe so. Oh, there we go.
Here we go.
Great, thanks. So today, of course, we'll cover introductions. We have a technical demonstration planned of our network management system, Extreme Cloud IQ. Most new customers that move over to Extreme Networks adopt Extreme because of our platform. Extreme Cloud IQ provides a lot more data network visibility than our competitive platforms out there. And essentially, it helps you minimize the time it takes to troubleshoot and improve your network performance management practices. So Mike will walk us through that today. Then we'll talk about some trends we're seeing in education, review some of our new devices, and address questions at the end here. I had to include this photo on the right. You can see that is Lambeau Field. Mike's manager, Rob Yammery, actually snapped that picture last year when he was at Lambeau, helping them with some networking in the evening. Every light that you see in the stadium there is an Extreme Networks access point. We're very proud of our customers in the NFL. Every team today uses our switching analytics software to help them manage their switching, and most teams in the NFL use Extreme Networks wireless access points and switching. So scale is definitely something we can handle. The last 3 Super Bowls have actually been run in arenas with Extreme Networks hardware, 100,000 screaming fans, many of them utilizing the Wi-Fi, and it performed very well. So when you have testing, when you have critical times where you have many students on the network at the same time, downloading video, etc., rest assured that our solutions will perform in those environments. A few notes about Extreme Networks at a high level. We're about 3,000 employees today. We're a $1.3 billion company operating in 80 countries across the globe, and we have one of the top-rated cloud-managed networking solutions available today. These are some of our largest customers. As I mentioned, whether you have a large environment or a small environment, we can certainly provide very good results within all of them. Wanted to tell a quick story about the win here in the middle top here. I'm not sure if many of you are familiar with the security breaches that happened in the Las Vegas Strip a few months back. I believe there were 4 hotel casino organizations that were attacked. 3 of them suffered significant breaches of data within their internal network systems. Win was also attacked, but they did not have any serious breaches. I attribute that largely to their use of Extreme Networks hardware and software to run their network, run their wireless. We have much better security standards than many of our competitors, and I think we do a fantastic job of setting up our customers for success. So as you all know, improving your security posture is not just for large organizations anymore. So that's something that we can certainly help you do if you choose to work with Extreme Advanced Wireless at some point in the future. In regards to Extreme Networks in Wisconsin, today we have about 336 customers. Half of those are school districts. So our largest market segment, our largest vertical industry served is education. School districts, higher ed organizations love that because you can see it in our products, you can see it in our business model, how we conduct our business. We like to be very hands-on with the customer, responsive, attentive to their needs, and we price our products very competitively. We want all of our students, all of our users that adopt our technology to be able to have the most modern equipment with the best security standards without having to break the bank. So we have several executives that live in Wisconsin, so definitely local. I am within, I believe, an hour of most, if not all of you. So definitely happy to connect on site, connect at events. We'll see you at Brainstorm in a couple of weeks, many of you, I'm sure. So looking forward to that. For the 6th consecutive year, Extreme Networks has been recognized as a Gartner Peer Insights Customer Choice for enterprise wired and wireless LAN infrastructure. Essentially, Gartner Peer Insights is kind of like an Amazon reviews platform, but every review is verified to be a legitimate customer. Last time I checked, Extreme Networks had like 350 customers that submitted responses within this, rating our products, rating us as an organization, our support team. I would certainly encourage you to Google Gartner Peer Insights, take a look at Extreme Networks, how we rank amongst our competitors. Very good way to see what do existing customers think about Extreme. The last thing I'll mention here before passing the microphone over to my partner, Mike Stepetic, is Extreme Networks is solely focused on the network. I feel like a lot of our competitors take their eye off the ball, and they have all sorts of security products and all sorts of cradle point things and all these different things. Well, we integrate with all of those providers, and we have great interoperability with your existing systems. We only make switches, wireless access points, SD-WAN boxes, and the best software on the market today to help you run it all. I think us being focused solely on the network allows us to provide best-in-breed solution that performs very well without all the extra bells and whistles that you're not going to need, right? Yeah, that's about it from me. Look forward to addressing some questions at the end of the call. I will pass the podium over to my partner, Mike, and again, thank you all for attending today.
Okay, so Extreme Cloud IQ. What it is it's really a cloud management system and orchestration kind of play for your wired, wireless, and SD-WAN solution that you purchased from Extreme. It's fully cloud-based, right? No on-premise devices necessary, no quote-unquote controller necessary on-premise to kind of orchestrate the network. We onboard devices by adding serial numbers to the platform. Once you add the serial number, plug the device in, it'll phone home, and you can fully manage it from our interface here. So with this being said, right, we are public cloud hosted, so we are in Amazon, we are in Azure, we are in Google. You will get assigned one of those as you sign up. I'm in Michigan. This is our Ohio dashboard that's just assigned to our demo lab, so oh.extremecloudiq.com. Depending on where you're at, you could be in Chicago, you could be in Texas, you could be anywhere throughout the United States or throughout one of our global regional data centers in Europe, in Europe, Germany, London, all across the board, Asia Pacific as well. But with this dashboard here, right, everything is slider based. So if I want to search a certain time window for any of my data, for client data, for overall holistic data, for other pieces, I can take this, I can do a quick 4-hour switch to look at a window and recalculate everything within 4 hours. Maybe I need to go back to a certain time from maybe midnight to 5 a.m., right? 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. It'll then recalculate with that. Again, this is a live lab. There's no magic behind the curtain here. It's the same experience you would have logging into the system from wherever you're located. Let's talk security and client information, right? So some of the biggest assets we have are troubleshooting clients and looking at potential issues, right? I'm gonna hop over to the clients page here. And, I would say troubleshooting is kind of like a game of guess who, right? Everyone calls and says, hey, I can't connect to the internet. Well, what does I can't connect to the internet mean? Let's hop in one of these devices here. Let's hope this is a good example. I'm going to go ahead to the same slider system we saw, right? Going from 1 hour, we'll go to 8 hours here. I can see at the very top right now kind of a couple different things, right? First, simply colors, right? Green is good, yellow is degraded, red is bad, black means I don't have enough information to run the full piece on. And we'll get to those in a second here. But I can tell that, if BTinker calls about an issue, I can hop into their device and I can say, okay, they're connected. I get a health score, which we'll hit on in a little bit, right? Kind of gives me that overall report card of their device. I can see that they're connected to the AP, MFG AP04 here, so our manufacturing place. I can hover over that. I can see by the number 1, there's only 1 client on that AP. I'm given more information, right? What VLAN is this native on? Am I trunking this VLAN correctly? Do I have user profiles? I can then see what switch is plugged into, right? So if there's an issue downstream, could it be an issue between the AP and the switch? Sure, could show yellow. Is there an issue between the switch and the internet or switch upstream? Absolutely, that could be yellow or red as well. I can then also sort by day, week, month, custom time periods up to 90 days back. We can also enable historical data further than the 90 days if necessary. Doesn't cost you anything extra. Just have to open that up on your side with our GTAC. But I can then see all these data points, right? How much data this client's use, their average RSSI, which is their signal strength, their noise floor, where they're currently connected to. I also get a ton of information on the client on the left side, right? What kind of OS are they running, IP, MAC address, if you're using 802.1x or a personal pre-shared private key authentication, right? I can get a username. Are they using a captive web portal, what VLAN they're on, what profile they're getting, right? Just everything you would potentially want to know about a client, I get right off the main page. If I scroll down here, right, I can tell how this client is doing and compare devices to this floor, maybe compare devices to this access point. Why is this relevant? Well, for example, if you're in a gymnasium or a cafeteria and you expect a lower class of service, it's going to show you where you're at in comparison to that. Maybe it's a less dense area compared to another area where it's very dense, maybe 1-to-1 per classroom versus maybe you're in an outdoor at the baseball field, right? You're going to have different levels based on the deployment, and it's going to tell you how you're doing. Same thing, signal noise ratio, Wi-Fi health compared to devices on this floor, or sometimes just compared to devices on this AP, right? If we're green, we know we're good. If we're not green, it's something to look at. But just more information here on this client, right? What supported radio mode does it have? Is this device AX capable? Is it only AC capable? My RX, TX speeds, are they low? Are they high? Success rate, good or bad, right? You can hover over all those and it'll tell you where you're at on those certain connection speeds. IP address, as we saw earlier. But this is where it gets very interesting, this client trail, right? I compare troubleshooting to a game of guess who. So in a game of guess who, you may have 24 characters on your side. You're going to ask questions and eliminate issues. Very similar to the game of troubleshooting when they call and say, I can't connect to the internet. Well, what if I could take that board of 24 people and by looking at one feature here, eliminate it down to maybe 2 or 3 issues, right? Your mean time to resolution has now gone from maybe 30 to 45 minutes down to about 3 to 4 minutes. And the data here gives it to us very straight, right? This is a session from the AP and the client communicating back and forth. There is data that's logged. It then gets uploaded here to the cloud, so you're able to see it very quickly. But again, right, the first time you connect for the day, you're going to associate. If the associate box is gray, we know that, hey, it's passing a session. It's not a new session. So as the device comes in for the first time or fully decommits from the network, it's going to re-associate the first time. But then it's just going to authenticate between APs or authenticate in those sessions. So authentication is green, right? Hey, look, we're using WPA2, WPA3. It did pass. Did it get an IP address? Absolutely. DHCP came back green. Here's the server it got its IP address from. So if you've got rogue DHCP servers running on your network, that it may not match up with that. We know it's maybe getting some other information. If that's your DHCP server, then perfect. There it is. Here's our response time. Here's the IP obtained by the device. Well, can it hit the gateway? Well, we ARP the gateway from the client as well, right? Yep, here's the gateway, 42 milliseconds round trip. That looks good. And then is DNS working? Absolutely. Here's a DNS, the server it got, and the response time is 22 milliseconds. So if a client calls in and all this is green, it's probably an issue with the client device more than an issue with the network, because our network checks have all passed. As you can see, they're all green in here, right? Maybe they called yesterday. We go back a day and look at other information. I can look at all these sessions from 228. I guess they're all from today still, if I change up top. But as we go right here, here's what a good example of, here's the IP address it obtained. It didn't get it from a server. It can't connect to the gateway. It can't get to DNS. So is this device maybe have a static IP on it? And maybe we're playing around with network settings, or something at home came from home, didn't migrate correctly, right? I'm giving you dots, and I'm giving you good points to look at and start investigating in. As we can see also, right, hey, today at 12:26, 12:36, the internet was slow. Well, we can go and say, hey, you weren't connected to APO4. You actually connected to APO5, which may be the next room or one in the hallway, and your device never roamed. I could have a low RSSI score, a bad signal to noise ratio, right? And we're saying, oh, I see what happened. Yeah, you were connected to the AP in the hallway, but it looks like you're connected to the correct AP now. And now you have the statistics to say, yes, that end user has a good experience with your IT team. Your IT team is giving them correct answers with data-driven decisions. And now everyone is happy. You have a reason for why it was slow. They say, okay, cool. How do we fix this in the future? The answer may be just to toggle your Wi-Fi on or off. Maybe it's optimizing your network by lowering power levels, upping minimum data rates. We have decisions that we can make off of with actual data. And also a cool little piece here is troubleshooting sessions. I can open up little ticket notes in here and say, hey, here was the error. Here's what I did. Here's the timestamp. Here's the device. So you can keep track of all the times maybe this client called or other things, right? Hey, I worked with them on 228 today. They weren't roaming from the AP correctly into the classroom. Let the client know. We're going to change lower the power level on the AP. Well, the client calls again maybe tomorrow, and it's the same issue. Cool. Look at the previous issues this client has had, and make decisions based on that. What's nice is all of it is then tracked right within here about that, so you can keep a quick view on it rather than referencing other systems. You can keep a quick little cheat sheet of notes in here. As we scroll down, right, client events. Oh, let me go back there. Sorry, that's one misclick. As we scroll down more and more on here, right, I'm going to get network usage, right, communicative rates, max negotiated rates. Again, this is a lab, so things are kind of wonky with the numbers because everything's very closely tied together. The other piece on here I like looking at is my maximum client capabilities, so I can see what channels they can communicate on their Wi-Fi chips. This has become less and less of an issue, down the road as Wi-Fi is kind of caught up on the 5 gigahertz standard through even the lower cost chipsets. But I still see issues in the manufacturing spaces where, as Daryl mentioned, right, they do a Wi-Fi kind of cook-off with everything. Is that sometimes it's never the AP, it's always the device. On some Zebra scanners, some little hand scanners, we see that they don't support certain Uni 2 extended channels. It's either Uni 1 and Uni 3. So when we're designing a network saying, hey, we want to use all these channels, well, that chipset can't communicate on those channels, so it thinks the device isn't going to work. And they're going to call and say, hey, my device isn't working, it's a network issue. When really now I can say, no, it's not a networking issue, it's just an issue with the device. We should probably buy new Zebra hand scanners from this decade and things like that. But one of the biggest pieces we're talking about with schools now in K12 is the transition to 6 gigahertz, and what does that look like? Well, if we've got devices that are newer in here, it will give me the highest capability. So if I am 6 gig capable, it will check the 6 gig box. So the issue with that is when you're going from Wi-Fi 2.4 and 5 kind of channels over to the 6 gigahertz channel, it ups the minimum floor of technology. It's kind of like a green acres type conversation where we're going to drop off all these older legacy protocols and only have the latest and greatest protocol on this band. So if you don't have a 6 gig card, you can't communicate on there. But if you've got older cards and you want to have your SSID broadcast on the 6 gigahertz in combination with 2.4 and 5, it's going to up that minimum authentication floor from WPA2 to WPA3. What does that mean? Well, it means if your device is AX capable, you're probably fine. It knows about WPA3. It can communicate back and forth. But if you've got devices that are AC or BG and N still, it may not support that level of encryption and communication types. So by you enabling 6 gigahertz, it may kick off a lot of older legacy devices that can't communicate. So it's a good conversation to have with Daryl and his team, with us at Extreme, to talk about maybe when that point is right and how do we know that we get there.
Yeah, and Mike, this seems like a perfect point, a perfect moment to do one of our polls here. Do you mind if I jump in real quick?
Absolutely, go for it.
Okay. So, spectrum selection and utilization. I'm going to ask each one of you to click on the one that best represents your implementation right now in your school. Do you still have access points where you're running 2.4 gigahertz on one radio and 5 gigahertz on the other? Or are you currently, if your access points support it, are you running dual 5 gigahertz, right? Taking advantage of that cleaner air, the cleaner spectrum, and the more channels? Or are you planning right now on upgrading to a solution that supports dual 5 gigahertz or 6E? Not to get confused with Wi-Fi 6, which is, AX technology. 6E literally does extend, right, the frequency range to 6E. So if we can ask everyone to please go ahead and answer this question here. We got just about everyone having answered, so we'll just give it a few more seconds here. Okay, we now have 100% sharing. What we're finding is 43% are currently using 2.4 and 5 gigahertz concurrently. 29% are doing dual 5 gigahertz, and 29% are planning on upgrading their network to support either dual 5 gigahertz or 6 gigahertz. So terrific. Thank you for that. Okay, Mike, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Perfect. With that being said, I'm going to actually pull this up real quick here, and let's see if I have the slide available to me. Okay, let me just go ahead and, so when we start talking about these pieces here in the network, right, based on the performance, right, are we looking at dual 5 gig? Are we looking at 6 gig integration? Are we looking at 2.4? Here's where we kind of fit in that portfolio, right, to kind of piggyback that. At our value level, our entry level, right, we've got AP3000/X. There's external AP connectors on this guy. Dual radio, right, so we can either run in 2.4 or 5 gig, or we can do 5 gig and 6 gig. So back to that conversation, right, if we still need 2.4 in the network, maybe the AP3000 isn't the right fit because it kind of shifts the legacy piece off when you go to the newer piece. Again, single gig port in this guy, works on 15 watts of PoE. So you've got older switches and you don't have the budget for switches but still want to upgrade, we can do that. You'll get those performance in there. As we go forward a little bit more, right, John, myself, Daryl, we really think this is the kind of the early entry point for K12, one device per student, one AP for classroom. The AP4000 fits really well in that level. Well, why does it work that way? Tri-radio. 2, 4, 5, and 6 concurrently broadcasting all at the same time. So you can have one SSID with 2, 4, and 5, one SSID with just the 6 gigahertz. They both tie back to the same profile, so they're using the same authentication methods. The only difference is going to be the SSID name. So you're broadcasting now 2 SSIDs. If any client device can see the 6 gigahertz, we want to prefer connect to that one. If they can't see the 6 gigahertz one, they're only going to see one, then perfect, connect to that one that you can see. Step up is going to be the multi-rate Ethernet port, right? So that has one port in, one port out, as I call it. You can use 2 ports in, but we really don't see much of that due to the kind of infrastructure Cat6 kind of runs to the AP. So one device, one port in, one port out. As you can see, 1/2.5 gig. With this tri-radio design and with going to Wi-Fi 6, you do get the ability to push over a gig per radio. A little bit difficult in the 2.4, but very possible on the 5 gigahertz and 6 gigahertz channels and subset of data. Again, going from Wi-Fi 4 to Wi-Fi 5, it was a speed increase. Going from Wi-Fi 5 to Wi-Fi 6, it is a concurrent connection count increase. And then going from Wi-Fi 6 to 6E is just, hey, here's more spectrum. Not pictured here is our Wi-Fi 7 AP, which is still not shipping yet. But again, Wi-Fi 7 is another speed increase as well. Differences between the 4000 and the 5010, right? 5010 has tri-radio, but using a higher density radio count, more concurrent connections as well for high density, right? On an AP4000 and an AP3000, on the 2x2s, we're going to see between 35 and 40 devices connect on each radio. So on the 3000, you have 2 radios, right? You're looking at about 55 to 70 concurrent devices, depending on what their bandwidth load is. On the 4000, if you're using all three and have clients connect between all three, you can easily get between 80 and 100 devices at full load. And then you probably will get about 150 to 175 on a 5010. Once again, dependent on what they're doing, right? If you're all streaming video, it's going to be more of an issue. If people are just checking and doing testing, looking up Google searches, it's going to be much lower bandwidth count. It'll scale much higher. The biggest differentiator between the 4000 and the 5010 is going to also be this multi-rate port, but then PoE out capabilities, right? So if you've got locations where you're able to run, you have one Ethernet run, but you want to add a security camera to that, right? You don't need to do a whole another run. We just need to provide 60 watts of power to the AP. The AP will then give 30 watts of power out to a device you can then just daisy chain off of it. So anywhere you have an AP or anywhere you have a security camera, you can put AP 5010s and then dangle security cameras off them to expand your network footprint very easily. And with that being said, is the second poll question up there, Daryl? Do you want to talk about that one?
Let me go ahead and pull that up right now.
Sure. It'll segue into my next part of the demo.
Okay. So, once again, please select the statement which best represents your wired network technology. Are you typically a 1 gig throughout your school or school district? Do you have any multi-gig, 1 gig or 2.5 gig or higher? Or are you 1 gig today, but you currently have a project or are looking to, in the near term, move to multi-gig? If you could please go ahead and answer the question. Boy, everyone's great today. It's going quick. 71% have voted already, 86, and 100%. So let me go ahead and close that.
Perfect.
And here we go. 29% are 1 gig, 57% multi-gig. That's actually higher than what I've been seeing. So that's good. It sounds like people are planning. They knew what was coming and are planning for it. And then the remaining 14% are looking to move to multi-gig. So terrific.
Perfect. So let's talk about switches, right? We do wired and we do wireless. Let's hit the wired little portfolio here for a second. So same view, right? I'm in a kind of holistic view here of all my devices online. Single pane of glass. I'm going to scroll down to switches here. And I've got 2 stacks of switches in our environment here. Let's click into the hotel switch. Let's roll with this guy today. Again, that slider system you're used to. And then a kind of a representative view of what the switches look like in person, and everything's clickable, mostly clickable, I would say, right? So I can hover over, my CPU usage on the stack, memory on the stack, table size, right? If I'm hitting a threshold on my switches, did I underbuy, did I overbuy, where is it at? Last seen, they phoned home, temperature, power and power usage, right? I can hover over that and say, hey, my power supplies are working normally. Here's my total PoE out budget, right? Do I need to look at buying 2 power supplies with my switches today? Do I want to look at maybe having dual power supplies on my higher power switches that are giving out 60 and 90 watts to some devices? It'll give you that kind of full view of each of those right here. And then if you have any fan module issues, it'll show you as well. What I like about our switches is that you don't need to be an expert in Extreme OS. You just kind of need to know how things work, right? What's a VLAN? How does a VLAN work? What's my native VLAN? What's my trunked VLAN? My tagged VLAN? My untagged VLAN? And you can click into these ports and it gives you a ton of information as well, right? So I can go in here and say, hey, this is port 1 of 1, port 1 on the stack, right? If I'm on 2.1, it'll change that over to 2.1 because I'm second one in the stack. I can click into here and, is this part of a link aggregation, a lag group? Is it a trunk port? What's my status? What VLAN is it on? What's this, current config, running config in a GUI view? What device is plugged into the other side? What's its LLDP neighbor? Traffic in, traffic out, spanning tree, forwarding, right? It's not blocked, there's no loop in the network. And then power use. Some big features are these guys right here, right? I can bounce the port, aka disable, enable the port. I can also run a cable test from this menu. Hey, is this cable good? Am I seeing 100 meg at the edge? Is it an issue on one side or the other? It's going to test those cables and those pins for you, telling you where things don't align correctly. And then bouncing PoE, huge feature, right? Sounds so simple. I want to kill power to a port and turn it back on. Well, you can do it from here, What's nice is you can also tier out this access to where your tier 1 help desk people may not have access to config or port change, but they can go ahead and turn ports on and off or bounce the ports so that you don't have to now give access to config level items, just the ability to reboot cameras as necessary. Maybe your security team needs to reboot cameras. You can give them access to this, so all they have is that ability to bounce and bounce PoE on those ports. And then stacking, right? It's a switch stack. I can see my stack is connected. We've got 10 gig stacking. Kind of a view here of all the devices that are connected in with my LLDP neighbors and where they're at. If I plug a device into it natively, I can go down here into clients and I can see, hey, here's what's plugged into that port. Here's the IP address. So if you want to look at what the Hotel Conf 1 AP is, there's the IP address of that guy. I'm not sure why it's not filling the rest of it out. It should, but weird. Talk about port configuration in here, right? How do we provision ports? How do we do things? I can go right into port VLAN configuration down here under configure. It's going to ask me to unlock the template. Okay. Oh, let's unlock that. It was unlocked already for myself. So it wants to confirm before you're making any changes. And then I can go down here and say, hey, here's my port type, right? You build the port types by just following a wizard. Nothing special, right? Hey, this is whatever it is, template 2, enter my description. Right, cool, it's a trunk port, I'm gonna hit next. My native VLANs, right, I'm gonna create them and tie them into names, or just type in numbers. I can also turn on DHCP snooping again, right? So if there should be no DHCP server on this port, we can turn that on. It'll block it at the edge. From there, right, I have the option for transmission types, CDP, LLDP, my spanning tree questions. Is it an edge port? Is it not an edge port? Do I want to turn on BPDU guard to prevent loops? Things like that. Storm control, right? Is it a multicast camera? Maybe we want to limit the speed out so it's not flooding everybody. Maybe limit it to 5 meg. We can do that through here. I can also lock the MAC address. So if it's a phone port in a public space, we know that, hey, if someone rips the phone off the wall and tries plugging in the cable, they're not going to get anywhere. ELRP, if you're full extreme, we can turn on loop protection and pieces like that. If you're not full extreme, we do not suggest turning that on, as it will conflict with a few things on third-party switches. For changing the PoE settings, and then summary, right? I would then hit save. I'm not going to save in the lab, but once I've saved that, I can then hit the drop down on here and then just select it, right? So from hotel AP to maybe hotel uplink, I've changed my native and my all allowed all. Maybe it goes to an L2 secure. I've changed those ports around. You can add a description at the end if you'd like. You then hit save port configuration and hit update. And within about 15 seconds, that command is then from the cloud pushed down via certificate encryption to the switch, and that port is then changed over. So you can now enable your tier 1 people to quickly change things around. The newest feature we have here is called this instant port or instant profile status. Let's talk about that. So what instant port is it's kind of a dynamic port policy that is configured and managed through the cloud and allows us to have security on ports. So I'm going to go over here to switching and go to instant port profiles. So with this here, right, I want to read this just so it kind of makes sense. Instant port profiles allow the ability to define dynamic port configuration such as VLAN assignment based on wired device types created within an instant port profile. What that means is that I am now able to build a database, kind of like a NAC system, a NAC light security system, that will allow us to categorize and classify devices based on their initial boot up flags or LLDP signaling or MAC address, and then reconfigure that port in real time to what that port should be. So for example, right, we can set up this basic port as, if none of these credentials are met, it's going to go to a non-forwarding VLAN, or maybe a guest VLAN. Usually we say non-forwarding for security, right? It puts them into a black hole. They can't go anywhere. Nothing's going to work. But if it does match, right, I can look at these pieces here, and we'll talk through this, right? I'll match up looking at an assignment rule and then change the port over to that type. So by default, right, if it's an access point port, I'm looking for LLDP capability matching wireless access point. If it matches wireless access point on its LLDP signaling, it'll say, hey, yep, I'm going to switch this to an access port or a trunk port, whatever I'd like. Boom, here's the VLAN. Trunk port, okay, education native, but I'm tagging 100, 101, and 102. Maybe my staff, my student, and my guest, and then my AP management. I would hit save. Perfect. I built the access point piece out. Maybe an IP phone, right? So if an IP phone is plugged in, I'm looking maybe the first 6 of the MAC address of those phones should all match up. If it is, cool. It's now a trunk phone with a data port. The VLAN is going to be, native or education 1115 again, and then the phone untags when you plug a computer into it will be on 1125. Again, right? Just numbers and VLANs you can change around based on your fit. But the whole point of this is then if your switch has all of its ports turned on to this instant port profile, you can plug any access point or any phone into those ports, and those ports will go from that kind of black hole VLAN and reconfigure itself to be an access point profile port or a phone profile port or printers or corporate devices, right? Things like that. The biggest function is auto configuration, right? You're not now having to do add, move, change. Everything is reading from a database and a template. All you're doing is updating this database template piece for the MAC addresses or for signaling for what it is, and that port will auto provision itself. So if it doesn't match up those rules, that device goes nowhere. So all those extra ports on your wall, they're in a black hole until a valid device is plugged in. When you unplug them, they're back to that black hole again, listening again and running through that list. This is kind of called NAC Lite in my mind. We do have a full-featured NAC solution, which will get you a ton more options, a ton more pieces, but that's another conversation for another day. And with that being said, we're at 1:45. I will pass it back to Daryl and open it up for Q&A.
Wonderful. Mike, thank you so much. I'm so glad you mentioned the NAC as well, because this inherent feature that you were just showing there is terrific, but there may be other individuals that need the full breadth of what a NAC can provide. Yes. And Extreme has that with NAC control. So down on the right-hand side in your little GoToWebinar remote control, you're going to see a section that says questions in there. Want to ask each and every one of you to think about what questions you have, and don't be embarrassed or shy or whatever. Put them in there, and we'll try to get to all of them. And if we can't, we promise to get back to you immediately following this. But I know we were talking. There's a lot we wanted to get into this, so we went rather quickly. But as we're talking about the changing requirements in education, E-rate has changed so many things on so many levels, right? With funding, I'd mentioned we came out with the wireless school initiative because schools were having such a hard time making the investment. But that came and that changed things. And what E-rate's been great about is, helping to fund that technology. But these days, you as ed tech professionals are being asked to do so much more. The complexity, the security, et cetera. However, E-rate really doesn't address the issue of headcount and being able to bring on more people to support all these new functions and responsibilities that the systems are being asked to do. So that's why we went into such great depth in this limited time to talk about what you can do from a single pane of glass. To address things such as security, right? Because networks these days, once again, you're not just passing bits and bytes, but due to the reality of the world we live in, there's not just data security, but physical security issues now, that your network does need to be up and running, needs to be resilient, needs to be secure. So heaven forbid if an urgent situation does arise, you and law enforcement and first responders are able to get in and see what they need to see, etc. So things that once again were necessarily on a job description or responsibility list, 5-10 years ago are very real today. So once again, I'm seeing right now we do have a question in here. Let me go ahead. Can we control which devices can connect to others if we want staff computers to connect to printers, but not allow students to do so? So Mike, do you want to address how we would normally take care of that?
Sure. So there's two ways of doing it. You can do it at a switch level or a firewall level. We've seen both. Both work fine and dandy. For example, doing it at a switch level would require you to write an access rule allowing VLANs to talk to each other. So, right, you've got your printer VLAN, you've got your staff VLAN. You can say those two can communicate, or sometimes you bring all that traffic up to the firewall and let a firewall manage that. Again, simplicity pieces, depending on where you want those access lists, can be done. We've seen it both ways. We've seen it one way or the other, depending on how your network is routed. A great conversation to have offline about what a best practice is and how your network infrastructure is laid out so that we can accurately say what is going to be easier in the long term for you. Again, we understand that lean IT is a thing. More and more devices come on the network. That does not scale with more and more help, and we get that.
And Mike, this is probably a perfect time to talk about another piece of functionality that's pretty unique to Extreme. Most of us got involved with wireless, whereas like you assign an SSID to a particular VLAN, and if you were doing 802.1x authentication against a radio server, then okay, I'm going to go ahead and put this person with this login on this VLAN. But maybe we can talk a little bit about what private pre-shared key is and how you could have one wireless LAN, right? But based on what private pre-shared key you have, you get access to these VLANs, or we shape traffic in this way, that kind of thing. Can you talk a little bit about and share that with us?
Yeah, let's talk about PPSK, and 802.1x is still very relevant in this conversation.
Correct.
So what PPSK does is allows us to manage a user database within Extreme's environment. We can sync it from Azure Active Directory as well. So you have a data set already in Azure or within Windows Active Directory. We sync that over and then apply each user their individual key. Based on the key that they type in to the network, I assign them a user, a VLAN, and security policies, traffic shaping policies, all of that. So each individual student would have their own key. I can also limit then how many devices they connect with that key, right? So each student may get one password, and then that one password allows for a maximum of 2 devices. It could be their school iPad and their Chromebook. Maybe it's only one device, so each student can only have their Chromebook on. If they try to bring another device in, they've already hit their theoretical maximum, so they can't connect a personal phone or other pieces like that. I also can look at certain things as operating system as well. So maybe you allow, hey, the students come in, I'm looking at the key. When they connect the device with the key, if it's a Chromebook, I'm giving it one policy. If it's an Apple phone or an Android phone, I'm giving it a guest policy. Again, they're still authenticating with their individual password. So I'm tying those devices to the individual user and seeing what they're doing holistically, but based on those pieces, right? Only their Chromebook will be on the student VLAN, and maybe the student VLAN can print, but when their iPhones or Android phones come on board, they get to a guest VLAN, so they can't use other school services. But from a managerial standpoint, each student has their own key. So here's your key, you're good to go, don't lose it. Same with the staff, right? Maybe the staff gets access to the same VLAN for all their devices because they're trusted. It comes into play when we're like, hey, I want to be able to broadcast to an Apple TV or a Chromecast from our Google devices. Cool, if it's a Google Chromebook, it can then talk to that VLAN and have access to those casting devices. But if it's a personal cell phone, it won't. So we can get very granular on how we assign that. Same thing with if you want to use 802.1x, right? I'm looking at one SSID, and based on potentially an Active Directory trait, we call it a filter ID. So a filter ID could be a group or another piece we flag in there. Usually it's a group, right? So if you connect with your Active Directory credentials to the SSID and I see you're in the staff group in Active Directory, you're going to get assigned the staff VLAN. If I see you are in the student group and you connect with your credentials, you're going to get put in the student VLAN. One SSID, intelligence on the back end, natively built in, will then give us that granular categorization of devices. So you've only got one database to manage, not on the other side, right? You're managing it up front, making sure they're in the right group, and everything on the back end flows then correctly. An hour up front saves you 10 hours down the line.
And Mike, a PPSK, is it really just for an individual, or can I create a private pre-share key and assign it to a group? Once again, shaping the traffic and saying it's only good for 8 hours or for a week or something like that?
A great piece, Daryl. We also do it for guests, right? So you can create these guest keys preemptively and have a list of them. Maybe print them out in business cards, put them in your common space. We're having for enterprise users, right? In their conference room, there's a stack of 100 of them. They're individual keys. Once they get used, they're active for only 4, 6, 8 hours. Once after they're used for that amount of time, we actually expire that key out of the database entirely. So if you come to my office, Daryl, and I give you a Wi-Fi key, and then later tonight you want to come in the network and do something fishy, your time is already up. Your key is no longer valid. You don't have a valid access key into there. So you're not writing the guest key on a whiteboard somewhere and say, oh, it's Advanced Wireless 2014. We changed it for the year. 2024, we changed it for the year. Well, now that key is still a hex key, 8 to 24 characters, and it will expire after a time. We've also seen it to where you've got a BYOD key that maybe is good for the month, and here's your key for the month, and after the month it expires. So if you come visit me next month, it's going to prompt me again for a new key because your other key is invalid. So keeping things off your network based on keys expiring is a great way to make sure you know what's always on your network and what's not in your network. Ties into that client page I started with, right? I can click clients and see every device connected to my network, how they connect, do they get onto a guest page, what happened. I can see and track all of that then.
And I think that's actually a perfect lead-in, because we got a question here, and I think it's relating to how things were under the previous wing operating system or wireless versus the cloud. So, how do most people implement their BYOD programs right now with Extreme Cloud IQ?
So BYOD is a great question. It's a big concern. I put BYOD and I also put IoT in the same category now, right? They're devices we don't trust. So with those pieces, right, we can give people a separate key. We can give a guest key out. We can have a self-registration page, right? Hey, I want to connect onto this network. I have some terms and conditions I want to accept, and then I'm granted on that network. You've got potentially MAC authentication for other pieces. You've got the option to, put things in isolation, right? So maybe you have a guest network that has a splash page to accept some terms and conditions, and we put each device in isolation. What that means is that my device can only talk to my device and the next hop in the default gateway, right? The AP has a firewall built into it to allow or block any crosstalk traffic for certain VLANs, for certain profiles, for certain items. So you're able to literally hit create a new SSID. I want to put my default out of the box default guest policy on there, and here's my splash page. All you got to do is upload a company logo, change some colors around if you want it to match. Otherwise, it's going to be purple and white, extreme colors. And you're then, by checking the few default boxes, your SSID is set up to where the splash page is there, and your device can only talk to itself and the default gateway. So you're secure on that front from then devices being able to jump around the network once they get on there or see other people on the network. Again, case-by-case basis, though, for what your main objective is.
Yeah. So if anybody else has any other questions, please, once again, jump into the question box. Nope, we can't have another pizza delivered before the end of the session, but hope you're enjoying the one that we did. We're able to send over to you. Any other questions that you may have, once again, please don't hesitate. We're trying to be respectful of everyone's time. So we got 3 minutes left. So any other questions you have, please feel free to type them in there. If I miss one, I promise we'll get back to you. But
and we're able after to sit down with anybody individually if you'd like to discuss your current use case or how you may have an idea. We're here to help form the network in best policies with input from you guys to make sure that we're securing it correctly and you've got the management tools in front of you to feel empowered to actively manage a network. I know it's not an easy task.
Yeah. So I'm just getting a couple of requests for some people who want to make sure that we follow up with them. So a couple of things. We're going to be making this available on our website and on our YouTube page and LinkedIn and Facebook. So if you're not following us there, AWI Mobility, you'll find, please go and follow us there. We'll have this there. We'll have it downloadable, and we'll be sending out the link to that in an email following this as well. Once again, we want to be respectful of your time. I want to thank all of you from taking time out from your very, very busy schedules to join us here today. We're honored that you were able to join us for that. John, did you want to say a few parting words as well on behalf of Extreme?
Absolutely. We'll see you at Brainstorm.
Yeah.
Really appreciate everyone's time today. If you're already working with Daryl, you know that you're in good hands. And if you are considering it, I would certainly encourage you to reach out to him and talk networking. We'll be working closely with him side by side to help you guys achieve whatever you're working towards. So want to thank everyone for taking the time to participate in this today, and look out for the next one. We're certainly planning another one in the summer.
Yeah. Thank you once again. Be safe and enjoy the rest of that piping hot pizza. Thanks again, everyone.